Hey guys, good afternoon, good evening, or good morning. So welcome back to my stream. Last week talking about melodies and how these were put together. And today I'll continue also with that part because there were still a few layers inside this track which I wanted to talk about, like some extra, well, layering of the melody and vocal group, but I'm gonna go into that later. For now, I'll just talk about that extra layering that I added on top of the melody. So let me get onto it. Let me put the microphone a bit closer. I'll go quickly through what I've been talking about in the previous streams. So I've got here my Omnisphere group, and this is actually part of the melody and the bass line. And I have pretty much grouped everything in here. I have the one Omnisphere instance with 8 instruments, because it supports 8 instruments at the same time, and I routed the inputs and the outputs. And what you see here on the right, you see Omnisphere 1, MIDI, Omnisphere Audio 1, and then Omnisphere MIDI 2, Omnisphere Audio 2. And basically, one is acting as an input, the MIDI, and the audio is acting as an output. And you can see here on the Omnisphere, there are the inputs and outputs for every independent individual part. So that's what I have set up in here. It's actually really easy for me, so that's why I set this up. And of course, I mentioned also in my other episodes, it saves a lot of CPU. Anyhow, now going back to the melodies and layering. Here I have my main melody, my the melody at the break. I've got the main melody sequence, the bass line, and then a second bass line which is acting more like a synth. This is let's say part this is part 6. And then I've got like supporting melody here Omnisphere 7, and that's pretty much it from Omnisphere. And then here below I have I'm using the Mini V. Actually, I have 2 instances of it, and one is kind of an arpeggio. And this other one is just like a simple sequence, which is layered with the main melody. Okay, so now arpeggiator Mini V3. I should name this differently. Well, I'll just leave it like this for now. This is track 45. You see it here on the right side of the screen, and it builds up with the volume automation. And it goes on the same notes of the chord. These are the basically the root notes of the chord and of the chord progression. So why I added this here? I added it again for creating of the tension. So it builds up with the volume and then it creates a tension just before the, let's say, the first drop of the track, because here is basically the introduction of the track, and then it keeps building up. So it starts really quiet and relaxed, and then it goes a bit more intense. And here at the drop, as you see, I take out also the pads, well, the strings, same thing in this project, and these two layers. Yeah, there is also a term for this, but it doesn't come now to mind. But when you have this abrupt, let's say, crossover, then you have the contrast, and it gives, yeah, you just create a different feeling, in this case, energy and variation, of course. So let's hear this again. I'm gonna play this part. So as you can see, it's a bit more clear. So it builds up. It becomes a bit noisy towards the end of the phrase here, musical phrase, and then it starts off with a bit of decay, with some decay from the previous elements, and then the melody, which is actually here at the top, it becomes a bit more clear, so it stands out, but in a subtle way. And this is not necessarily this element here, the ARP Mini V3, track 45. It's actually not so in your face, but it's there. So the volume goes higher and higher there. And now let's see what happens here at the break. I mean, when you look at the screen, you see things, they appear a bit random. I basically dragged everything along, and it was pretty much in the same. I was pretty flat, I would say, and then I started to remove elements here and there to make a bit more room for other elements to stand out, but also to to have a bit of playfulness, and just have this flow that is not always the same, and that randomness actually turns into something coherent, so it makes sense. That's actually the whole idea. And there is actually something very interesting I sometimes use. I should maybe use it more often. You have a website, random oblique strategies. So actually this is something that a lot of creative people is using. So if you search on Google this term, random oblique strategies, it doesn't matter what you do creatively. It can be, I don't know, design, sound design, music production, painting, whatever. It gives you, because these strategies have been created by creative people, who need to have this, in a way, like a throw of dice, and then it gives you certain ideas or motivates you to take certain actions that you would normally not take. This is very, very interesting. So in a way, it's like just throwing the dice, and then you have on each side, you have different actions you could take. Like, I don't know, one would be just delete the main melody and replace it with the bass line. Another one would be change the key from major to minor. Well, so you have all these elements, and then you get some fresh ideas of what actions you could take, and then those actions could lead you to something very interesting, actually. you can really get to places where the normal train of thought would not go, or maybe would not go so easily. So it's just really like completely going outwards, you know, and then just randomly picking a direction. Okay, so back to the song now. Let's hear this particular part here. As you can see, it repeats the notes of the melody, which is here, of the main melody. But then that has a roll there. So I'm gonna play this part here from bar 105. Okay, the main, well, the gliding melody there, it's a bit too loud, but it has to do with mixing. Yeah. And actually, let me put it back to how it was on the just on the audio recording, so it doesn't play directly from Omnisphere. Okay, so now if I take this one off, this clip off. So there is something missing, of course, that element which I just put on mute. But actually the reason why I kept it there is because it builds up the vibe, the rhythm. So you go from this element, which is rhythmical, of course, to this. And then the rhythm is a bit more present. It's more it has a bit more accent. And then of course it's used as a catalyst towards building up. So as you heard, here it keeps the rhythm and then it builds slightly up, and then this other clip takes over, which basically is just the root note, and it repeats up to the point where drops.